Hi everyone, it's so good to be here. Hi, I'm Kendra Havens. If you haven't met me before, I've been working on the .NET and Visual team for Studio team for about 5.5 years now. I also interned twice in 2014 and 2015, so I got to be around for some of the cool things, some of the first pushes of Roslyn going open source on Codeplex and that kind of stuff. Yeah, fairly integrated into a lot of the tooling kind of experiences. I was the productivity PM for a while. I did .NET and Docker. I did some getting started on VS Code as C# extension stuff with Dustin Campbell, who wrote quite a lot of that. And most recently, for the past couple of years, I've been on the testing experience. So all of the testing tools in Visual Studio and the test platform. So I don't know if any of you, noted the major redesign that happened in 16.2 when we got like a brand new test explorer, and it was a lot faster, and there's more buttons, and it became a table control, so you got more data on your tests. That was me. That was our team. Hopefully you really liked it. If you didn't, feel free to chat me. feel free to reach out and tell me what I did wrong. There's always things that to be improved in this. Cool. So I have a lot that I can share. A lot of it is just the stack of demos, the stack of new stuff that's been coming out that we try to share as much as we can, and then you might have a better idea of what questions I can answer. I might hopefully get some of you interested, and we can talk a little bit if you want to dig into anything that you see. Sound good? Cool. Okay. Let's dive into some code. Sharing screen. So I'm actually really curious, how familiar all of you are with everything I'm going to talk about. So if you want to keep your video on so I can see if you're like nodding or if you're like completely zoned out and bored, I'll move on to the next thing. That'll be really helpful. Cool. So just generally, I'm using how do I show this? There we go. Visual Studio 2022. So it did come out with the .NET Conf in November and the Visual Studio 2022 launch. We have a couple updates out already, and we do have the 17.1 preview out already as well. So I'll be using the current release for this entire demo. It is 64-bit, so that is the really, really big thing that happened with this major release. So you're going to have just more working memory. You'll avoid out-of-memory exceptions for everything. So even down to like opening, editing, searching, running, debugging, we make use of the extra memory now available. It doesn't change the types or bitness of the applications that you develop with Visual Studio. So you can still build 32-bit apps with 64-bit Visual Studio, and you just get all of the performance benefits of working with more memory available. One of the really big things with this is Solution Explorer search is 50% faster for solutions that we measure it in. So we ran a lot of analysis with like things like Orchard Core, so open source projects that you can kind of find, yay, party reactions. Yeah, so we measured this on open source repositories like Orchard Core, and that have I think several dozen, maybe hundreds of projects and that kind of searching. So this is a fairly small project that I'm using today, but it's just faster. It expands everything. It's quite nice. So about 50% faster in our labs. I think we're going to do a blog post on performance and try to make it kind of reproducible and what you can test on your own, sort of like we do with .NET benchmarks, but we'll see. Cool. So actually, speaking of performance, I always want to call out, if you haven't looked at the .NET 6 performance posts, you can find it at aka.ms/.NET perf 6. Stephen Toop does these massive roll-ups of all of the major releases of .NET. And this has him analyzing over 400 PRs that have happened within the .NET 6 timeframe. So this isn't just .NET 5, it's all .NET 6, and analyzing what performance improvements that we see with these like tiniest changes to our runtime frameworks and libraries. So things like formatting, sums, get length, and compare. We can run benchmarks on, and he reports sort of the microsecond and nanosecond improvements of each of these functions. So when we say .NET 6 is super fast, there's a lot of actually data you can dig into and understand why and exactly where those improvements came from. Just kind of fun. I really like Steven. He's great. Cool. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. Dan mentioned we did make some improvements recently to .NET MAUI. While I have a browser showed off, I can kind of share a bit of what those are. I haven't dug into them a ton because it's less, this isn't testing stuff. It's not my team, no. But there's some stuff here. So better Windows control styling with Fluent Design APIs. So you kind of see some examples there of what it looks like in different themes. There's multi-Windows apps that are, I think, much simpler to write. To open and control a new window and hold all of the references of all the windows that you've created. Yeah, so just some new stuff to check out. I don't think there's, templates, more C# 10 usage. You can see there's file scoped namespace is being used, so you can get rid of that extra block namespace kind of sizing, and the rest is just comments. I was like, I didn't think there was that much. Why is this so much scroll? Okay, lots of people have things to say. And you can check out the new Get features. These are all on devblogs.microsoft.com/Visual Studio. And the new Get features are pretty interesting. So Taser has some pretty good GIFs. I'm trying to see if they're big enough, so you can right click in a couple of places and just right click on different branches that you're looking at, compare with current branch. And you can use your Git history or your Git repository as well, that shows all of the history of both local and remote kind of branches, and right click on those, and there's a few more options to kind of compare branches, as well as there was, checking out specific commits, which is pretty cool. So again, in that same window, right-clicking on, different commits, you can run the -- detach command, and it's all kind of visually there for you. It's kind of nice little things. Cool. So one thing I wanted to call out, I was talking with Dan a little bit about this before we started. You might notice I want to totally present in the dark theme because that's the easiest on a lot of people's eyes. We weren't allowed to do that before Visual Studio 2022. You might have noticed all of our docs and everything were always using blue theme, and a lot of our stuff always had blue theme. That's because a lot of the highlight colors didn't actually meet accessibility requirements, especially for things that got like this secondary highlight. We fixed a lot of those in Visual Studio 2022. So now when you're presenting and sharing your screen and stuff, you might just know that you can use dark theme without kind of while being fully inclusive. For people who have trouble with distinguishing certain colors and stuff, we now meet sort of a baseline of contrast margin that we needed to meet. So I'm very excited for all of our docs to change into dark theme and stop blinding me. It'll be really nice. Light. Okay. Super huge thing that you might have noticed right away. These tabs are different colors based on project. So my OS information is in a different project, and if I open more things within other projects, you can see that they have a different color. So that's a really nice way to keep your tabs a little bit better sorted. And the really cool thing as well with this, and I'll have to drag this down a little bit, is you can also set these colors per project as well, which was a new thing. And I'm trying to remember where we added it. But that was one of the first questions that I got when we demoed this was, oh, can we set the specific color for a specific project? And I believe you can. I'm trying to remember if it's in Tools, Options, Tabs, Color, Tabs and Windows. I forget where it is, but that's a capability. I'm sure if I looked it up and spent a little more time on it. Cool. So got new icons refresh. We do have a new property pages UI, which is very nice. So this is, first of all, themed, which is really nice. It doesn't look like tools options still does, which I hope we get themed someday. But so it now kind of matches the Stark theme. It's one continuous scroll. There's a search, which is really nice. If I looked up like code analysis, I could kind of see what, everywhere that it appears in my property pages. Just little things that were really tricky to kind of find, very fun. Yeah, that's all kind of built in now, which is great. Cool. So one thing, sorry, that thing that keeps dropping down. I guess I don't know if you can see it. It's okay, it's the zoom. A zoom thing keeps on blocking the top part of my screen. So sorry if I yell a lot. I don't know. I do these little fake yells like, ah! Okay, that's why. So one thing that I want to show off is hot reload. I hope a lot of you might be familiar with it. I don't know. But hot reload is kind of a very, very cool thing that allows you to avoid builds even when you've made changes. So it kind of, it's difficult to not sort of reuse the rebuild or anything like that. It avoids builds as much as possible and hot swaps out sort of any changes that you're making to your system. So even when I'm in debug mode, I can make changes. Let's go ahead and pin this. So I can do something like add an extra header, and I can hot reload, or I can, this little fire icon is what it is, or if this is checked, I can hot reload on file save, and just, so I can hit Control S, and without doing anything to my project, oh, it's kind of slow, that new header kind of appeared. So that's kind of fun. But that's just, sort of I'm in a Razor file right now. We're kind of used to seeing that with HTML. So let's do it with some code. So here's where I find what planets are visible today. And I have a little button. Oh, so this app is just kind of it's just a demo app. Definitely don't use it as architecture guidance. It finds the NASA RSS feed. It calculates what days are till the full moon. It has some JSON files that I parse to find what planets are visible in the night sky. Just some stuff. So I can also find tomorrow's planets that are visible. So if I go ahead and edit this code, so this is my find tomorrow's visible planets, and it looks kind of wild because I was really zoomed in. I want to go ahead and break this logic. So I want it to find no planets visible, so it'll never return a 0 to know that it's within the certain dates of that's parsed. So when I save it, and it reloads. Oh, I guess I have to press that button again. So now nothing is visible there. And actually, let's do it so that it's not attached to a button. Let's do it for today's visible planets. That just kind of loads ambiently with the rest of the page. So if I turn this to a 1, and this as well, and I hit Control S, I didn't actually have to do any kind of rebuild, and I didn't need to refresh. I didn't need to hit F5, and it reloaded my changes. So hot reload is super, super impactful. And I actually want to show you a little bit about how it can help you with testing as well, because testing is sort of my my passion there. So if I go into my tests, and I'll go ahead and run a bunch of my tests here, right-click Run. I'll go ahead and pin my window. Should be running our visible tests right now. So initially, we have to do a build to run tests, but I can also turn on this experimental feature, which is enabling hot reload in tests as well. So this is going to avoid builds for every test run wherever it can. So if you're familiar with the concept of edit and continue at all during debugging, Hot reload was very, very much an evolution of that. But you could never get that when you were testing. You can now get that when you're testing with hot reload, which is very cool. Testing specifically, it's only for test projects that are targeting .NET 6 or later. With general hot reload that you do when you're F5ing or debugging or anything, you can use previous versions of .NET. So it can go back further behind than projects only targeting .NET 6. You can even use it with some .NET framework projects because it's more of what happens with the debugger. With test projects specifically, it's .NET 6 only. So let me show you what this looks like. So right now, I kind of have for the planet data parsing tests, I have a similar idea. I'm just printing out what planets are visible in tonight's sky. So if I change this logic again, and I actually want to go ahead and pin this to the side because we want to keep an eye on what our output looks like. So I've done a build. I want to go ahead and clear that. And, oh, I didn't mean to move my test explorer too. And where did my output go? It's moving them all together, sorry. Well, I guess I'll come back to this. So my output is clear right now for my build, right? I'm going to go ahead and make a change to this test. And I'm not even going to save my file, but I'm going to go ahead and rerun it. And you're going to see I'm breaking this code, so I'm going to get a different output. So now I get nothing. And if we go back here, no build happened in between those changes of what I made to my test. So we always got feedback where we had to trim down this build dependency tree of when people are running tests. They're like, oh, I just built that. I don't want to have to build again just to get my test results. Hot reload is massively going to help you do that. We need to start with at least one build on your disk, and then we can start swapping out those changes. So one build will occur, but for subsequent builds, it can massively, massively reduce your test time and the time all of that takes. So very excited about hot reload. Pretty cool. Cool. So just a couple other testing things I can show. I think, yeah, that'll go well. You might have been noticing I'm using standard output here. Standard output and standard error. So things like console.writeLine in the test method do now print to the test detail summary pane. So just kind of a helpful thing to have in context instead of just yeeting it into the ether. It's very helpful that it's now actually in context and then somewhere you can explore. So we do the same thing with, any messages or stack traces and standard error when you get that. So it's also, these sections are kind of collapsible. You can obviously highlight a substring within that, which actually used to be one of the restrictions that we were not fans of. You had to kind of copy all and then take out only what you needed and put that into Google or whatever you needed to search for. So we definitely fixed that. And for standard output, one little thing, you can right click and wrap the test summary as well. Whew, finally. Sorry, it took us a while to get that, but very nice to have. So again, these are collapsible panes, and if you have a very, very long output, we also did some work to improve how we kind of made test logs, especially if you have multiple test logs for one test that are generated or multiple files resulting from one test. That should be much more performant, and you'll run into kind of fewer constraints there, and especially as we're truncating it, you can see much more in your test pane before you go out and need to open those additional files. So it's sort of like a better summary of test output that you're seeing. Cool. One little thing, I'm really curious how much of this you all have already seen or not, but did I share my audio? We can now play a sound when tests finish running, which is really nice. I'm not sure if any of you will be able to hear it though, because I don't know if I needed to share my computer audio. You got it? Yay! Awesome. So that's the kind of thing that you can hook up. So there's actually two different sounds that you can hook up as well. That's the sound for a test run that has all passing tests, and you can hook up a sound for a test run that has at least one failing test. So you can kind of use like a Windows fail sound. And the top, how many of you had already seen this actually? I'm kind of curious. No? Okay, some new people, one Stefan had. Okay, cool. I want to make sure I'm kind of mixing it up and showing new things that you haven't seen. So, so you can actually configure these sounds to absolutely anything that you want to specify. Yes, you can have quite a lot of fun with this. The extension points for Visual Studio are in the Windows 10 sound dialog. We have lots of points for breakpoints and everything. And for failed tests, you can do something like, let's do that again. So it'll accept any WAV file that you want, which is just, again, a lot of goofy fun. I've had some fun on Twitter with this, so I hope you enjoy. It actually started as an accessibility feature. This was requested because developers with any visual impairment needed to use screen readers, and they were like swapping to output windows to figure out if the test run had completed, and it was a really, really like annoying system because they didn't have any kind of cue of how much time they needed to wait to figure out when their test run had finished. But obviously this is helpful for tons of people, anyone who's multitasking or has any kind of long running build and they want to go and do something else and then come back in context. So lots of good things. It just kind of builds on itself, you know. Cool. So I talked about console.writeline, test audio cues. This is a really good one that I think everyone will be using quite a lot. You can now right-click and show in Test Explorer. So it opens the Test Explorer, expands to the node. So I could have the Test Explorer entirely closed. And so the window, Test Explorer window isn't even open right now. And if I just wanted to get a little bit more context on my test, right-click, show in Test Explorer, or Control-ES. So Control-ES pops open my Test Explorer and highlights the test that let's see, it didn't highlight right. S. There we go. And it highlights the test that my cursor is in the editor. So this is very much like a sync with active document, sort of in the Solution Explorer, that keeps what is in your editor in context with your other window. So when you click on that, I already have that selected. So when you click on that, it kind of jumps your highlight. But I did have that open. Okay, let's go over here. There we go. So it jumps your highlight down to what you currently have open over on your left side, which is kind of fun. Cool. So one thing that's very new in Visual Studio 2022 is remote test execution. So for a long, long time, you've had to compile tests on your local machine and then push them out to your pipeline to see how they behaved on other operating systems, like Linux or something like that. So you get feedback from Linux tests kind of via your pipeline tools, or you'd spin up all of this Docker thing and you wouldn't be able to debug through a test running on Linux unless you did VS Code or it kind of deployed it and all of that stuff. Remote test execution can bring all of that kind of context from a different operating system into your local environment. So you might have noticed there's this new dropdown here. This dropdown appears when you have a test environment.json file in your project. And we've actually recently, we've added the ability to add a test environment.json file in a template, but it's not in the current release. So it'll be in probably 17.1. So what this does is it can actually tell my computer, hey, I have a Docker container running on my local machine, or I have an SSH connection, or you can run this on my WSL Ubuntu or whatever distribution you need. Connect my Test Explorer to that and run a test there, and you can actually debug through this as well. So if I go ahead and switch to my Linux container, and actually I'm going to go ahead and build my container so it's running on my local machine. So Docker build. So this is very much bring your own compute. So you have to provision the VM. You have to ensure that SSH connections are like allowed on that VM and all of that. But if you bring it to the table, you can connect Visual Studio to it, which is exciting. So we have some documentation on how to do that as well at aka.ms/remote.
Kendra, sorry to interrupt, but your audio is breaking up a bit. I think some people in the chat are saying so it's not just me. Can you just try muting and unmuting or something maybe? Or
sure, I could also, as soon as I find the button.
I don't know the best way of resetting the audio.
There it is. I can also switch. I've switched to my webcam mic, which is sometimes better. Yes? Okay. Cool. So I was saying aka.ms/remote testing will let you know how to set up and give you some examples of this, how to do local container connections and SSH connections and WSL as well. So I've gone ahead and built that container on my local machine. So now I can point my Test Explorer to connect to it. And it's actually going to rediscover some of my tests. So I have some cross-platform tests here that will kind of differentiate their output based on whether they are running on Linux or Windows, and will actually skip them if they're not on the operating system that they want. So this running on Linux is skipped if it's if I'm currently running tests on Windows, and this running on Windows is skipped if I'm currently running not tests on Linux. So I can kind of run all of my tests on the operating systems where I want them to be run. And I'll go ahead and run those. So I've connected to a Linux environment. And I could probably turn off the self-congratulatory applause there. But you can see my Windows tests are actually being skipped, and my test running on Linux has passed. So if I switched back to Windows, it kind of takes a minute, it rediscovers my tests. And I can run all of my OS tests again. And my Windows is passing and my Linux is skipped. So you can kind of toggle in between actual operating systems that you get to use. And you can, in fact, debug. Actually, let me switch back to Linux. It'll rediscover my tests. So a little lag. We definitely want to give like more feedback during the process, but it's cool to be able to. So it's kind of caching the test results of my last test run. And now I can maybe debug is running on Linux. And it's actually installing the VS debugger if it senses that the container cannot attach to the VS debugger. So it actually goes and grabs some artifacts for me. And I can hit a breakpoint of a test as it's running in Linux. So right now I can hover over, my operating system, step through things, is OS platform, get my debug variables. Can I step through? Where's my hover information? I believe. Yeah, so you can kind of explore, what variables are available inside of a different, inside of your container that your debugger is attached to, which is pretty cool. There we go. So OS platform Linux, and you can pin and everything that you normally do. So you can connect, your local development experience to a context that you'd normally only get in CI. Fun. Okay. So I'll switch back to Windows. And yeah, that's some remote testing. And how interested are we in more test stuff? Because I have some Playwright things to show, or I could go back to the editor. Okay, I got a nod from people for some Playwright coolness. So Playwright is the web UI testing framework that Microsoft is kind of has launched, and it's completely open source. It's language agnostic. Oh, yay, Playwright, test. Oh, I love when I find test people. Thank you. Okay, so Playwright is, yeah, completely open source. It's actually built language agnostically. It was not built by the .NET team, which is just fundamentally interesting. So it was also built by one of our technical fellows, Pavel Feldman, who worked a lot on Puppeteer, and he is very, very interested in making asynchronous testing amazing. Because part of the problem with testing any kind of UI test was always a lot of flakiness, and web services have lag, and when you press a button, you don't always immediately expect a response. So he thought, asynchronous testing needed to be a fundamental part of this framework, and that's what he built, which is very cool. So Playwright has a CLI tool, so it is cross-platform. It works in all modern browsers. You can run these tests on any operating system, Mac, Linux, Windows, depending on what language you choose and what's supported there and everything. And it does come with a recorder. So I launched the Playwright recorder just now. And I'll go ahead and navigate to our Playwright dev docs. And you can kind of see the recorder following along with what actions I do on the right side. So I can navigate to the docs, and you can see that it awaits, clicking async docs. I have element highlights everywhere around here, so I can have, different actions recorded. You can see it's awaiting every single click and page that I made. So it's very, very built in to the idea that web pages need to account for latency. We cannot have sleep threads. Sorry, Selenium, we can't do it. We need to have latency kind of built into the language. So here's the .NET docs and how to kind of add .NET. It ships as a NuGet package and all of that. You can see that I have my target language dropdown that it's actually generating here. So I only have C# selected right now, but it can generate for Java, JavaScript, and Python, as well as C#. And it's actually generating just a program. So you can run this as like sort of a standalone console app, essentially, that will put your website through its paces. Or I can copy out the bottom of this, or the body of this, and close out my recorder, and I can copy it into just like a regular sort of MS test method, or any test method of your choice, XUnit, InUnit, whatever you want to use. And it actually also suggested certain asserts that I could be using. We don't always get the framework down perfectly, so there's like some minor adjustments to what the generated code might need to change and everything, but you can sort of write all of the asserts that it generated for certain steps and run it like a regular test. One thing, I have headless set to false, so when I rerun this, it'll actually like play in front of me. So I can also set that to headless true, and then it won't actually take up like any of the UI and that kind of thing if you're running on a server. So it kind of flying through all of the little things that I clicked on, and then it exits out of my browser. So one really cool thing is you can also grab screenshots of what you're doing, and you can take a screenshot of your app at any of your web app at any stage of what you use. So if you want to see what it looks like on a certain page at a certain step, and then a little bit later you want another screenshot, you can take a bunch of screenshots of those different states. So very, very nice sort of a recorded test. So pretty easy to do as well. Cool. So
Kendra, sorry, quick question. With the screenshots, can you get it to screenshot something when it fails, so you can see where on the screen it got to? So if it asserts false, and takes a screenshot of how it's broken, so you can then see.
I believe so, as long as your test didn't end, or a failed assert didn't cause the test to the test process to exit. I believe you can take a screenshot at any time. Okay. I think you'd need to account for any like assert failure messages that would just end the test because the test failed, and it wouldn't get to later steps in it, depending on what framework you're using. And you'd have to account for that. So, but yeah, this can be, you know, at any stage of your test as well. So
cool, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, please feel free to to put questions in chat or interrupt me. I want to adapt this content. I want to know what you guys actually want to know about. But that's all my test stuff. I can now get into productivity too, which is also really fun.
Is there continuous testing as well, like you were saying about the hot reload? Can you do that within continuous testing, so you're getting really fast feedback as you're coding?
From Playwright tests, I believe so.
Any test really.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you talking about like live unit testing combined with hot reload?
Yeah.
We don't have that integrated yet, but obviously we really, really want that to work. We've actually done a lot to change the live unit testing build system. A huge gripe that we've had with it for a long time has been its scaling to massive solutions. That is the first thing that we are fixing as we redo the build system, and then we'll be able to move to hot reload implementation. Yeah.
Is that still in enterprise? I can't remember. It's been a while since I've tried. That's still enterprise.
It's one of the enterprise only ones. That's actually one of the more recent ones. I'm still trying to get our other enterprise tools down SKU. I just want more people to be able to use them. And they're like, but Kendra, our business, developers. Anyway, those are the discussions that we have really, really regularly. Cool. Let's look at some code fixes and refactorings. So I talked a little bit about file scoped namespaces earlier. Where should I be doing that in? Oh yeah, let's do it here. Okay. So I pointed out file scope namespaces support in Maui. This is just an example of what those look like. So normally you're very used to namespaces in blocks with curly braces and everything. C#10 introduced file scope namespaces where you can have, if you're only using one namespace per file, you can get rid of those extra curly braces and move all of your code. Just, you know, save a tab, save some white space, shift all of your code a little bit left, literally on your screen, and use that semicolon instead. So a lot of people like that. And the new thing here is that we added a refactoring to get there. And if you realize that you want multiple namespaces in one file, you will need to convert to the block scope namespace. So you can just being able to toggle back and forth is kind of, you know, simple and nice. Cool. One thing, we actually had a lot of nullability code fixes added as well. So you might have been able to hover and see a warning before, but it didn't actually have a code fix that was warning you, oh, you have a non-null value when you're exiting a constructor. Maybe you should declare this as nullable so you get warnings whenever you use it to do null checks. But now we can actually declare as nullable. So you get rid of that warning, and a bunch of other warnings appear where you use it to do null checks to make sure that you're accessing everything safely. Yeah, so little code fix there to get you through. I hate seeing warnings and errors without actually having code fixes that accompany them, because I have to, you know, search through my mind what my compiler is trying to tell me to do. So just a little thing. Another little thing you might have seen. We now have a code fix to change the namespace to match the folder structure. I know a lot of people, use, yay, claps, use folders to, you know, organize their code, and they always want their namespaces to be absolutely in sync. The really big one here is that you can actually right-click on your projects as well and sync namespaces across everything. So you don't need to do individual files. You can do it for the whole solution. Yay! So that's pretty cool. So namespaces have been updated, and now my solar system namespace matches the folder that it's in. Another thing you might have seen right there is remove unused references. Finally, it's been a long time coming, right? So now if you have a couple references that you don't use, it searches through all of your using statements across all of your code files and everything to see if you use them. And it'll remove them from your CS project. So we kind of have a scary error message here, or info box here. So I'll say apply to remove these, and it says, oh, this action can't be undone. But I hit yes, and it will just show up. If you're using source control, that should never be a scary box for you. So I can still, see and compare the references that were removed in my Get Changes window. If it opens, let's go. Oh, I didn't save it. That's fine. There it is. Yeah, so you can see what references it removed if you weren't using them. Cool. So little other stuff is you can extract a base class, just a helpful thing to have. You can select what members you want to be extracted to it. If you want to create a new file or add it to your regular file, that was just, in the control dot menu. So control dot is how I'm opening all of the screwdriver icons and the light bulbs that I'm getting. All of those helpful things in the margin are how you access code fixes. And this is a really little one that I absolutely geek out about. If I have my cursor at the end of a comment and I press, enter, nothing happens. Or it adds a new line. If I have my cursor in the middle of a comment and I press enter, it now continues the comment. Before, we sucked, but now it's great, which I'm really happy about. Another thing along those lines that I really wanted to call out that I will probably never get over. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I have to demo other stuff to get to it. So hopefully, there you go. Some of you might have seen this like gray text appearing in front of your cursor. This is IntelliCode whole line completion. So this scans through the variables in your local scope and kind of plugs in what is most likely to be called in what you're typing. It does use AI. So this is the IntelliCode model that we trained over hundreds of thousands of open source repos on GitHub to find common code patterns and refactorings. It's kind of similar to Copilot. It is a different algorithm though. It actually works with a much more kind of filtered selection, and it's been limited to one line so far. So we're definitely looking at like combining or expanding as it goes, but all of that gray text that's just, helping you code will be right there. So you can kind of press tab to accept it as you go, and it kind of also paused at certain stages if I wanted to plug in a different parameter. Cool. So this is the one thing I really wanted to show that's kind of just like the comment thing that just makes my life. If I type a semicolon anywhere within parentheses now, it just adds it to the end of the line. So let me put my cursor somewhere else. Let's like put it somewhere random. I'm going to type a semicolon again. And it just appears where it's supposed to appear, because in C# we know where semicolons go. That should be easy. Anyway, just one of those little things that make my life. Okay. Actually, let's do var ll equals. Small things I wanted to just show off was that we now have completion as well for things like overloaded operators, which we didn't have before. So when you typed a dot, you wouldn't see things just because they didn't start with dot. So overloaded on operators, because you'd be using equals or something, you wouldn't know that it was overloaded in your list. Or you might be using an indexer. So just because they didn't start with dot doesn't mean that they shouldn't appear in what kind of calls are available on this type. So we added them. So now you can get something like this indexer added, and it'll erase the dot and put in the square brackets, for example. Or if I do, one of the overloaded operators, let's add, it'll, erase the dot and put it where it can be.
Cool, so that's IntelliSense completion for overloaded operators, indexers, we got whole line completion. I hope this is an oldie but a goodie. We added date time and time span completion. So if you hit control space to open any kind of completion list, control space is the keyboard shortcut that you want. We added look up help for all of these. We also added them with any kind of regex command that people are typing. So date time, time span completion, and regex all have these kind of, what do you call them? Lookup lists. So it's a little bit one less thing that you have to Google and compare what the table is or what formatting you're using. And it gives examples of what the formatting will actually be, which is really nice. Okay, just little things. Yeah. So I could dig into editor config. Do we like this? Wait, Dan said, what about a for loop? Was that a while ago or was that just now?
Oh no, I was just messing around. That was when you were saying that the semicolon goes to the end of the line, but obviously a for loop has semicolons in it. So I was curious what happened.
Good. Well, okay. So when I type a for loop, I'm already going to use tab with the. It is only when calls. Yeah, sorry, I probably shouldn't have explained that way. That was just my words. I think it's right.
I was just being silly anyway.
I use snippets when I'm typing for loops. Dan, no. Okay. Cool. Actually, I wanted to leave like 10 minutes for questions. There's so much more that I could show. We've got new Razor editor stuff. Editor config is absolutely cool if you're doing anything with code style. We also have a new UI for editor config that separates, kind of categorizes what code styles you're looking at. It has some awesome search settings. So if I'm doing something like my namespace preferences, that would be in code style as well. You can search for that and it'll show up. And if you still really liked the text view is all still there. This UI just sits on top of it. You can press F7 to get out of designer mode. Oh my gosh, sorry. I have FN lock on. So there we go. Okay, F7 to get the text-based file back. But everything that you change will be reflected in this text-based file that lives at the root of your repo that documents all code style and refactorings that you can apply from your team. Really, really cool thing about this stuff too is that it shows where the setting is coming from. So if a certain setting is set by my editor config in my current project, I can tell, or if it's set by my local Visual Studio settings, I can also tell. So if I'm working across different repos and I'm like, I am not a usings inside of namespace person, where is that coming from? You can know it's probably set by your team. Cool. Okay, so we got some questions. Let's dig into them. How can I determine why my code is rebuilt when I run or re-debug a test but haven't changed any code or assets in the project solution? I would rely on the output windows for that if you want to check. So anytime it's kind of a pain to toggle through what output window you're looking at, but build will always show it and test will always show it. So and if you're ever worried about reloading about hot reload, kind of you want to do a full build and you're worried that hot reload is taking over and you haven't done like a full proper build in a while because you want to actually like check in these DLLs or whatever, just do Control-Shift-B and that'll always do a full build. It'll overwrite any kind of hot reload thing. So Control-Shift-B is still going to be a proper build. Hope that answers Matt's question. Thank you for the questions coming in. Love hot reload, but when you run without debugging, there's no way to stop the hot reload session. That's a good one. I'm going to write that down actually and bug Dimitri Lylan about it because he'll be able to kind of adjust that. There's no way to stop the hot reload. Okay. And specifically during run without debug. Actually, Stefan, if there's a reason why you'd want to Oh, I'm sorry, that was from Douglas. Could you add a little bit more context of why you would like to stop the hot reload session? Because there's definitely a lot that we're working on. Some edits can't be applied through hot reload, but we're trying to catch all of those and actually prompt the user to all they really need to do is click restart their debugging session, and that'll stop the hot reload session, kind of restart, but maybe that needs to be more direct. Cool. I'll go. So yeah, any more context that you'd like when you'd like to stop the hot reload session when you're running without debugging? Hot disable. Rex has a solution. -- hot to disable hot reload in CLI. Okay, I'll go to Stefan's. Is there a plan to support global config similar to editor config? Because I have style settings in editor config, but analyzer settings in global config file. I'm not sure I understand the question. You want analyzer settings in your global config file?
Yes.
Why don't you want an editor config at that solution
Maybe I'm
level?
a bit specific about the naming, since the editor config are kind of like editor settings about writing code, and the global config I think is specifically designed for analyzer settings, which is I think newer. Has it been added in Net 5, I think? And I do like that, but it's not supported by Visual Studio yet. And I was wondering if there is a plan to support that too. Somewhere.
You can set analyzer settings in editor config if they're supported code style rules or white space, or many analyzers are available. So there's a whole analyzer section for setting those via editor config. Maybe I'm catching up though.
I actually believe that answered my question. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Yes. So yes, it's supported. Thank you. So regarding testing that, what can I do so that the source for tests I create with C# source generators is navigable inside the test explorer? Yeah. I don't think I'm not sure if there's anything you can do today. I know it's on our backlog to detect those automatically. So I'll have to follow up on that maybe. If anyone wants to tweet their follow-ups at me, I can find people who do know the answer to help with that. So source generated tests. In Test Explorer. I'm taking notes on what I can answer. Cool. So Douglas responded, yeah, when I start making code changes, you get error messages because it keeps trying to hot reload. You get error messages. Is it stuff like the process is currently in use and not sure. I'll go on to Rex's. Is GitHub Copilot coming to VS? We are currently working on it. Yes. There's some things that are holding us up. GitHub Copilot is a little bit too prescriptive right now with some things that it suggests. We stated suggesting, I think a major pushback was it suggested like GPL code directly, which we did. We don't want to ever suggest licenses to people and have people accidentally tab to accept in that. So we're trying to filter it down. So I was kind of mentioning IntelliCode specifically did work to not be too verbose in that way. And I think we kind of need to merge the projects, but we're definitely in talks about it. If you follow Mark Wilson Thomas on Twitter, he will probably be giving updates on that because he is our IntelliCode AI co-pilot liaison. Oh, Matt sent me an email. Thank you. I will check my spam folder. I'm so sorry if I didn't follow up yet. Well, but it was only January 7th. We had a long weekend in the US, so I'll check in on that. How is editor config added to solution items? So editor config is interesting. You can add it wherever you want to, and it actually nests rules based on folder hierarchy. So this editor config is at my root because I specifically added it to my root. Sorry, I keep forgetting that I have my FN lock on. So if I actually open the actual code file in this, oh, I don't have root set on this. But basically, editor config is in my solution items because it is at the solution level of this folder, which means it'll apply to all of the subfolders underneath it. And editor config is interesting because if I had an editor config like one level down in my Solr system, I could actually have different code style in different folders because of how editor config can inherit rules, which is kind of fun. So it kind of, you put it where you want it based on where you want those code style rules to apply. So if I have something in a subfolder, it'll kind of override what's in the parent. Or I could just have a parent editor config. So usually what I thought it might say, but I haven't actually written was, I believe it's something like parent. Oh no, it's root. Root equals true is usually at the top of a lot of these. And that tells our code style rules in Visual Studio essentially that this is the highest hierarchy of where the editor config is and where it's going to apply. But if you want to just add it, there is a template for it as well. So I could right click on, this time I right clicked on my solution level node and I can do add new item. And we have templates for it. So you can use .NET or a default, which I believe is empty, but if I did a .NET, it'll just add, it already exists in this location. Let's go one level down. I can add a new editor config. And it kind of generates that. And if I do F7, get out of the designer mode, you can see that this kind of inferred what code style I was already using in this folder based on the code base that was already there and when the date that it was generated. So that's kind of cool. Cool. Any feedback? Oh, yes. And editor config is also a template from the CLI. Thanks, Stefan. Cool. Questions, comments, concerns? I will follow up with you, Matt, later with your email, I promise. Thank you. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much for keeping more of your cameras on. It was nice to see the feedback and the emojis and reactions and stuff. Gives me energy.
That's been really, really good. I think I tried installing Visual Studio like a couple of days ago. The only thing that's held me back so far is it was going to remove .NET 5, I think, from my whole machine or something. But I think that might have been like a Mac OS thing rather than a general thing. I don't know. Is that? We
did an awful bug. There was a bug with some of the earlier versions of the .NET 6 preview that actually flipped your, it was what .NET install was on your path, and we flipped it from 64 to 86, and a lot of people had no .NET 86s installed, so it looked like there were no .NET SDKs on their machine, and you were like, oh, .NET 6 erased all of my .NET installs, and it was a real bummer. But newer things should be there. And all you needed to do was change the order of your path variables back. No biggie. Sorry about that.
I wasn't sure. It seemed like quite an active message, I think, because it was. I'm not entirely sure I've even got it installed on this machine anyway. I spend most of my time kind of sat around in VS Code at the moment doing random stuff. But yeah, I went to install it and it was actively telling me that it was going to remove .NET 5 and install .NET 6, which in hindsight actually would have been fine because, yeah, it's not a problem. But that might be because I was on a Mac. I can send you a screenshot of the error message.
That'd be great.
But otherwise,
I feel like,
to be honest, I'm going to have to install it anyway because it looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it was, I'm not as familiar with, sometimes if we recognize that people are in like a certain channel, we'll remove what was there and install like the next version but I don't think we did that with the SDK. Yeah, I'll have to, I'd love a screenshot just to, inform myself.
I'll redo it and drop you a note on, I don't know, DM on Twitter or something.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's all good. I just, yeah, I'm sure it would have been fine because I haven't actually done a lot of .NET on this machine anyway, so it probably wouldn't have caused me any issues. Just kind of switch over to my Surface for older stuff, but yeah, it's all good. But yeah, it looks pretty awesome. I've got to be honest. Yeah,
I'm quite impressed with the clarity of it as on the screen share as well. I wish like half of my when I'm pair programming with someone, it was that clear.
So is there a secret to doing that then? Or?
Secret to doing what, sorry?
The clarity of the screen, or is that just the colours? Because we're now in.
Well, I think it's the colours. It's kind of it seems a lot more. I think Kendra, you mentioned the contrast has been improved.
Yeah, I would also think it might be. Are you usually at a 1920 by 1080p resolution? Because that's our golden resolution.
I don't know. I should know. Let me just check.
Yeah,
what am I on? I am 1920 by 1200.
Okay. So that should be even lower. So that meaning it should be even clearer.
Yeah, it's super crisp. It's very clear. But normally if I'm pair programming with someone, it's their screen's quite blurry. It might be a Teams work versus Zoom thing, but this to me.
It's at 104%. That 4% makes all the difference.
Yeah. Control scroll. Ooh. That's what it is. And you might consider live share if you're pair programming with someone. So that way because that only streams, instead of streaming pixel by pixel, it's streaming character by character, which is, a much higher quality thing. If any of you don't know what I'm talking about, this live share button will share the context of your current IDE with someone else, so they can actually open it in their version of Visual Studio. And if they press build or set a breakpoint or anything like that, your machine is still doing all of the work and just streaming the results over to there. So it's like a little bit better than a screen share as far as quality, but also they can like navigate your files. And all you do is kind of send them a link in any kind of chat, and they can join. Be wary. You can make it read only, but by default it gives like they could use the developer PowerShell. They could do quite a lot. So make sure they're within your own organization, or you do trust them and everything and that kind of thing. But it's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah, you don't want the guy that's going to come on and format your hard drive in the PowerShell. That's not going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all good. So thank you so much for that. That genuinely is a pleasure to watch. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on there, and I know certainly one of the big things that I'm going to go away and play with there is Playwright and automating a load of tests, because that looks amazing. Thank you very, very much, Kendra, for joining us and kind of sharing all of the efforts of your team's hard work. It's really good to see. Everyone else, also thank you so much for taking time up from your evening to sort of spend it with us and talk about cool stuff, and sharing cameras to see your happy smiley faces. There you go. It's awesome. Like, there's loads of people scowling, and the minute you say that, everyone just says, oh yeah, we are happy. It's all fine. But thank you so much. It's really good to kind of get everyone joining together still and kind of sharing the passion for what it is that we do. So really much appreciated. Dan, as usual, thank you for organising pretty much everything. And even though I did actually almost start doing the intro slides for this week, and then realised Dan had already done them and it was his turn, so I had very little to do, which was very cool. Thank you very much for that, Dan. And obviously all the other effort that goes into it. If you haven't yet, you can also listen to Kendra on Dan's podcast. It's definitely worth listening to, and the rest of the episodes as well. Download and listen to them, take the dog for a walk and put your headphones in, whatever. It's definitely worth listening to. We have our next meetup in February on the 15th. Which is our lightning talks, so it's going to be pretty cool. As Dan said, there's a whole collection of things in there, from sort of the .NET 6 APIs to static web apps, etc. So yeah, it should be really cool. Please come along and join us for that. And that's kind of it. Congratulations, winners, on winning stuff. Well done. It's always good to be randomly selected for something, so nice work. Other than that, if you're up for sticking around for like a chat and some beverages, if you have beverages, I mean, clearly I'm not coming around to your house to pour you a beer or make you tea. But stick around if you want to. If not, it'd be lovely to see you all next month. Thank you.